I always thought love meant standing by someone, even when it got quiet, even when it got strange. I was there for Mark through all the late nights, the missed dinners, the important deadlines. He'd walk through the door exhausted, drop his bag by the couch, and I'd greet him with a kiss and a warm plate. That was my way of loving him, being steady when everything else was spinning. He didn't have to ask for loyalty. I gave it freely. When he first mentioned Tessa, it barely registered. "Just someone from work," he said, pouring himself a glass of wine. I laughed along with his stories about her sharp wit or how she handled tough clients. I didn't feel threatened. Not really. I mean, every man has coworkers. Every marriage has to allow space for independence, right? But something about how often her name came up, it started to sting a little. Then the changes crept in. The way he angled his phone away from me. The sudden work trips that didn't quite add up. Our Friday date nights turned into, let's rain check. I noticed it all. Every shift, every hesitation. But I didn't say anything. I told myself I was just being paranoid. That's what love does, doesn't it? It trusts. It chooses not to dig. But the truth? Lies don't wait for permission. They break the surface when they're ready. There were nights I'd lie in bed long after he fell asleep, staring at the ceiling, trying to push away the ache in my chest. I hated that I was even questioning him. It felt like I was betraying my own heart. I wasn't the jealous type, or at least, I didn't used to be. But when someone you love starts disappearing in front of your eyes, you can't help but wonder where they're going. Or worse, who they're going to. I started noticing the details, the way he smiled at his phone, how he suddenly started wearing cologne to work again, even on casual Fridays. One night, I asked if he wanted to do something spontaneous, just the two of us, like old times. He looked at me, almost surprised, and said he had a thing early in the morning. No explanation, no apology, just that hollow tone that made me feel like I'd asked for too much. Still, I held on. I told myself every couple goes through dry spells. That this was just a rough patch, not a warning sign. I didn't want to be that woman, the one who snoops, who accuses, who digs. I wanted to be someone he trusted, even when he didn't seem to trust me back. But trust, I was learning, isn't just about not checking his phone. It's about believing him when everything in your gut screams not to. I started second-guessing myself more than I ever had. Was I being dramatic? Insecure? Maybe even a little ungrateful? After all, Mark wasn't cruel. He didn't yell or cheat, at least not that I could prove. But it was the little things that chipped away at me, the way he no longer asked how my day was. How his goodnight kisses felt like obligations, not affection. Love, I realized, could vanish in the spaces where silence grows. There were moments I almost said something, almost asked the hard questions, but I was scared, not of his answer, but of confirming the suspicion that had been gnawing at me. What if I was right? What if everything we'd built was already cracked beneath the surface? So I said nothing. I smiled when I didn't want to. I pretended I didn't see the late-night messages lighting up his screen. Denial, I guess, is its own kind of comfort. But then came the night that changed everything. I wasn't looking for the truth. Not really. I didn't go through his things, didn't scroll through his emails. I was just folding laundry, minding my own business. And that's when his work phone lit up. One message, just enough of it visible to tear down everything I'd been trying so hard to protect. I didn't want to snoop. But lies don't need permission to reveal themselves. It was just a buzz, a small vibration on the edge of the bed. Harmless, right? I remember thinking, it's probably just another client. But something in me hesitated. Mark was in the shower, humming a song I didn't recognize. The steam curled out from under the bathroom door while I stood frozen, holding one of his shirts, heart pounding for reasons I couldn't explain. Then I looked down at the screen. The preview was short, barely a sentence, but it was enough to set fire to the foundation I had spent years building. Last night was perfect. Let's do it again. But maybe not at the same hotel. My eyes didn't even blink. I just stood there, letting the words cut through the quiet. And the name beneath it? Tessa. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't cry. I didn't gasp. I just felt hollow. I opened the thread, calmly, almost mechanically, and scrolled. There it was, in black and white, their affair laid out like a play-by-play. The planning, the code words, the memories they shared. They had their own world, a secret, curated escape with no room for me. I kept reading, not to punish myself, but to understand how far it went. And as I read, something inside me shifted. I wasn't broken. I was sharpening. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding his phone like it was something radioactive. My fingers didn't tremble. I didn't scream. But inside, I felt this cold, steady burn, like grief mixed with clarity. It was strange. I always thought if this ever happened to me, I'd fall apart. But I didn't. I felt focused, more awake than I had in months. Like everything blurry had just snapped into cruel, perfect focus. Every message was another piece of the puzzle I hadn't wanted to solve. Their dates were deliberate, always timed when I was working late or visiting my sister. They even joked about me, calling me the reason we have to get creative. That one stung. Not because it was cruel, but because it made me invisible in their world. I wasn't a woman. I was an obstacle. And somehow, that was worse. I heard the shower turn off, heard him humming again, carefree and content. And in that moment, I knew. I wouldn't confront him. Not tonight. Not with wet hair and a towel around his waist. He didn't deserve my pain. Not yet. I stood up, placed the phone exactly where I'd found it, and went back to folding clothes. Not because I was fine, but because I had work to do. Quiet, deliberate work. I finished the laundry. I even smiled when he walked into the room, pretending nothing had changed, as if I hadn't just watched our marriage rot from the inside out. He kissed the top of my head like he always did, and I let him. Not because I forgave him, but because I wanted to remember that moment, the last time he touched me without knowing I knew. I was already stepping into a different version of myself. He talked about work. I nodded. He mentioned a team dinner coming up, probably with her. I asked him what he'd wear. I wanted to see if he'd lie to my face or avoid answering altogether. Turns out he was getting good at both, but so was I. There's a strange kind of power in watching someone lie to you while you quietly decide what to do with the truth. That night, I didn't sleep. I planned. Not revenge. Not yet. Just clarity. I made tea, sat at the kitchen table, and made a list. Not of what he did. I didn't need help remembering that, but of what I could do. I wasn't going to scream, or beg, or fight for scraps of honesty. No, I was going to respond the only way I knew how, with precision. They'd planned their nights so carefully. Now it was my turn to be intentional. The next morning, I woke up early, earlier than usual. He was still asleep, sprawled across the bed like he hadn't shattered anything. I watched him for a moment, not with love, but with a kind of detached curiosity. How easily he rested, while I had memorized every word of his betrayal just hours before. I got up, made coffee, and checked the florist's hours. I had no appetite, just a plan. I didn't want drama. I didn't need screaming or scenes. What I wanted was clarity, delivered in roses and thorns. I put on my nicest coat, the one he always said made me look powerful, and drove downtown. The florist was just opening. The smell hit me before the door even shut. Sweet, fragrant, almost too cheerful for what I was about to do. But that was the point. Let it be beautiful. I asked for something show-stopping. Bold colors, big blooms, no expense spared. I told the florist it was for a very special occasion, and in a way it was. The card was short. I wrote it slowly, with care. You two are perfect. You both lie so well. That was it. No signature, no explanation, just the truth, packaged neatly between peonies and poisoned grace. I gave the address, Mark's office. I knew exactly what I was doing. Their office wasn't some tucked-away corner. It was open plan, all glass walls and whispers, the kind of place where secrets have nowhere to hide. I pictured it. Tessa at her desk, the The delivery arriving, her name called out across the room. The pause, the stares. The moment she read the card and realized someone knew. That I knew. And I wanted her to feel every inch of that spotlight. I didn't do it for revenge. Not really. I did it because some truths deserve to be seen. They crafted their affair in shadows, hotel rooms, hidden texts, lunch meetings that were anything but. So I brought it into the light. I didn't scream. I didn't send angry emails or show up at his work. I just let my message bloom in front of everyone, a public truth delivered with quiet hands. As I walked out of the shop, receipt in hand, I felt strangely calm. No shaking, no tears, just stillness. Like the kind that comes after a storm, when the air is thick but clear. I didn't rush home. I wandered through the city for a while, letting the weight lift. I wasn't going to wait for karma. I was the consequence. And the most cutting part? I hadn't said a single word. Later that afternoon, I watched him get ready for work like it was any other day. He kissed me goodbye, asked if I needed anything. I said no. And for the first time in weeks, I meant it. I didn't need him to confess or explain or apologize. I didn't need closure from the person who shattered everything. I just needed space, and a front row seat to the unraveling he didn't see coming. Part of me wondered how long it would take. Would he notice the shift in Tessa first? Or would it be the looks from his coworkers? The subtle way conversations slowed when he walked in? The questions no one dared ask out loud? It didn't matter. I had planted the seed. Now I'd watch it grow. Not out of cruelty, but because sometimes silence tells the loudest truths. I didn't destroy his life. I didn't flip tables or throw clothes out the window. I didn't burn his world to the ground. I simply let it wilt, petal by petal, under the weight of the truth. A truth I delivered with care. A truth wrapped in cellophane and ribbon. And as I washed the dishes that night, I smiled to myself. Because for once, I knew the ending before he did. The bouquet arrived mid-morning. I knew because I checked the delivery confirmation like I was tracking a storm. I imagined it sitting at the receptionist's desk, loud and unapologetic, while Mark typed away just a few feet from impact. I pictured Tessa hearing her name called, the shift in her tone as she said, "That's for me?" She probably smiled at first. She probably thought it was romantic. I almost feel bad about that. Almost. I imagined the exact second she pulled the card from between the stems, her smile faltering, her eyes scanning the words once, then again. Her hand probably trembled. She didn't expect me to be clever, to be calm. She expected drama, maybe a confrontation. What she got instead was a performance, and the whole office became the audience. And the best part? I didn't have to be there to feel it happen. I let my imagination fill in the rest. The hush falling over her desk, the way chairs stopped rolling, conversations paused. I pictured Mark walking in with his coffee, confused by the silence, by the looks. Then seeing the bouquet, seeing her. Maybe he asked what was going on. Maybe she tried to hide the card. But it was too late. My message had already done its work, loud and floral and devastating. By noon, he was calling me. Twice, then 3 times. I didn't pick up. Not because I was trying to punish him, but because there was nothing left to say. He'd spent months speaking in half-truths and coded texts. Now he could sit in silence for a while. I let the phone ring while I made lunch. Nothing fancy, just something warm, something for me. That day wasn't about them anymore. It was mine. I could almost hear the panic in his voicemails. That frantic tone people get when their lives start collapsing under their own weight. I imagined him pacing between desks, trying to do damage control without actually admitting what he'd done. That's the thing about secrets. Once they surface, they don't go quietly. And I didn't need to shout to make sure everyone heard. I just had to open the right curtain, and in that moment, I didn't feel cruel. I felt clear. Empowered even. I hadn't raised my voice or thrown punches. I hadn't called her names or begged him to love me better. I simply lit a match and left it at their doorstep. Elegant, quiet, and impossible to ignore. They built their affair in secret. I exposed it with one public arrangement. I didn't destroy them. I revealed them. That afternoon, I went for a walk. No destination, just movement. I needed air, sunlight, distance. Not from him, from the version of me that tolerated being in the dark. With every step, I felt lighter, freer. The truth was out in the open now, and I didn't need to clean up the mess. It wasn't mine to fix. Let them explain. Let them squirm. Let them wonder how long I had known. I thought about how carefully they'd hidden it. The meetings, the timing, the lies wrapped in just enough truth to feel convincing. But secrets are greedy things. They always want more space. And eventually, they leave traces. I didn't catch them because I was snooping. I caught them because I paid attention. Because my silence wasn't ignorance. It was patience. And now, they were on the clock. I didn't call him back that night. Didn't answer the texts. I didn't owe him my voice. Not after how he'd used it to comfort one woman while betraying another. Let him sit with the discomfort. Let him explain to HR why a bouquet brought the entire floor to a standstill. I had nothing left to prove. And I wasn't done yet. The flowers were just the opening act. I moved out a week later. No warning, no fight. Just a quiet morning where I packed the essentials, left the keys on the table, and walked away from the life we had built on borrowed honesty. He came home to an echo. No notes, no dramatic goodbye. Just absence. And in that silence, I hoped he'd finally hear the truth I'd been carrying alone for far too long. Not every goodbye is loud. Some just close the door and don't look back. He begged, of course. The messages came in waves. Apologies, confusion, even desperation. I made a mistake. It didn't mean anything. We can fix this. But he didn't break my heart. He unraveled my trust. And you can't stitch that back together with words. I replied once, and only once. No rage, no heartbreak, just clarity. I told him, you had a partner. You wanted a performance. Good luck with your co-star. I expected anger, maybe denial. But there was only silence. Maybe he finally understood. Maybe not. I didn't care anymore. What mattered was that I felt whole in a way I hadn't in years. I wasn't stuck in the loop of pretending everything was fine. I wasn't performing love while being quietly starved of it. I had chosen myself, not in a loud, triumphant way, but in the small, steady way that lasts. In the months that followed, I didn't just rebuild, I reinvented. I took the pain, the betrayal, the months of doubt, and turned them into something useful. I started a consulting firm. Quietly at first. Just a small website, a few calls with women like me, women who had been left in the dark, who didn't know what to do next. It wasn't about revenge. It was about giving direction to those still stuck in the confusion I had escaped. These weren't just clients. They were survivors of well-crafted lies and polite betrayals. Women who smiled through broken dinners, who carried the weight of secrets they never asked to hold. I helped them see what I had finally understood. That silence isn't strength if it's rooted in fear. That staying isn't loyalty if it's only protecting a facade. I gave them options, legal tools, emotional clarity, a way forward. It felt strange at first, building something from the ruins, but that's the thing about being broken open. You get to choose what fills the space. And I chose purpose. I chose to use what hurt me to help others feel less alone. Every message I received, every whispered story shared across my desk, reminded me why I left. I hadn't just walked away from a man. I had walked toward myself. I never heard from Tessa. Not directly, anyway. But I saw her name disappear from the company roster. A mutual friend mentioned she moved on. Maybe she did. Or maybe the flowers spoke louder than any confrontation ever could. As for Mark, he tried a few more times. Messages filled with regret, with nostalgia, with the kind of tenderness that only shows up once you've been caught. I didn't respond. Some stories don't deserve a second chapter. People always imagine betrayal ends with screaming or slammed doors. But sometimes it ends in silence, in packing boxes, redirected mail, and a calm you earn inch by inch. I didn't destroy them. I didn't need to. I told the truth, and the truth did all the heavy lifting. It bloomed in whispers. It stretched through office hallways and sank into awkward silences. It made space for something better. They lied beautifully. Truly they did. But I told the truth, and I told it in a way neither of them could ignore. Not in court, not in their careers, and not in the mirror. And now, every woman who walks through my door learns what I learned the hard way. Your peace doesn't come from being chosen. It comes from choosing yourself. And my truth? It still blooms in every corner of their shame.